Hey, YouTube world, and today I'm going to start this video off like I do every other one, letting you know that you can find me all over the web. And guess what? In my world, today it is cold, it is rainy, it is snowy, we've got it all. We've got rain, hail, and snow going on, so all at the same time. Plus we have more coming. So if in your world you had the same thing going on, feel free to look me up over there at Crafting with Six. Snuggle up, find an art project to do, run with it, because you sure as heck don't want to be out there in that. All right, today's subject is, I want to talk about DFS, CPS, whatever your initials are in your state for Child Protective Services or Children and Family Services. Again, whatever it is they call it in your state. Today I want to know your opinion on that particular branch of the government, and do you think it's for the good, or do you think it's just bull? Now, here's been my experience with Child Protective Services. There are some children out there who absolutely need this service, who absolutely need a voice, who absolutely need someone to step in for them and rescue them, to help them, to remove them from their home. My question is who sets these guidelines? Who is it left up to go, this is guideline A, guideline B, guideline C, and if every family does not conform to this, oh my God, this child's in trouble, we're going to rush in, we're going to take them right out of there, and we're going to whisk them off to a better home, and we're going to call it foster care. Well, here's the thing. The foster care system, let's think about that for a minute. Foster care, a family who's going to stand in the place of a real parent and who is going to nurture a child that is not biologically theirs. Now, they're supposed to nurture, protect, and tend to the well-being and needs of the child. Now, keep in mind, guys, I was raised by the foster care system of the great state of Louisiana. And I want to tell you, as a child that grew up as what we were known as back then, I don't know what they call them now, but what we were known as back then was a ward of the state, meaning that the state had custody, whatever the hell that means. Basically, the state could be anyone from, I guess, the DFS worker, as we called them, Division of Family Services, DFS. Some people call them CPS, Child Protective Services. You know, it's all the same thing. But I grew up as a ward of the state, and I belonged to no one. Now, I grew up in what they called a orphanage, but by the time I was older, they had started calling them group homes, and they did away with the term orphanage. And then it was a group home. And to my understanding, now they don't have the group homes. They try to place every child into an actual home. How that's working out for them, I don't know. But do you guys think that this service is always right? I mean, I grew up as a ward of the state, and I could not tell you any thing about my past. No one has any answers for me. Apparently I was taken from my family or whoever at a very young age. I have no memory of anything other than bouncing from placement to placement and then back to the group homes, and then another placement, and then back to a group home. And anybody out there, hey guys, anybody out there that knows anybody from the St. Elizabeth group home or the Melanie girls home, hey, look me up, guys. I might remember you. But I in New Orleans, Louisiana, right across from the Sophie B. Wright Junior High School. Look me up, guys, if y'all remember being there. It's been so long, I can't remember. I might have done, I want to say 7th or 8th grade over there. But we lived right across from, in the St. Elizabeth group home was this big, huge church looking type building, and it was right across from Sophie B. Wright. But anyways, guys, look me up if you remember me. I can't give you my real name here, but if you look me up over there, or if you look me up here, then maybe we can take the conversation somewhere else and see if I remember you or if you remember me. But I'm sorry, I got off topic there because I got a little bit, okay. Anyways, y'all know I'm goofy. But anyways, I just wonder how many of y'all think that the system is a yes or a no. Because here's the thing, all right. I had my dealings with as a child, but I've also had my dealings with CPS as an adult, dealing with my own children. And let me tell you something. My experience has been that these people have a very low tolerance for embarrassment and a very low knowledge of the law, and they have a very high indignation, and where they are very vengeful. If you embarrass them in any way, they will come after you with a vengeance. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that knows this. Okay, here's the scenario that happened with me and my kids. This was years and years ago. So, because my children, my boys that are now 15 and 17, were then, I want to say Junior was 2, and the other one was 4. So they were young. This was, like I said, years ago. And we lived in another part of the state. And we were driving through the state park, which happened to be on a state highway. The state highway cut through the park. And it was late that night. I'm not going to lie. It was late that night. But the boys were having trouble sleeping. And it was kind of cool, but not too cold. But we were in a car, so it didn't matter. But we were driving through the park, and a police officer pulled us over to let us know that the park was closed. And we couldn't understand why she was telling us this, because we were on a state highway. We weren't in the park. We were going through the park because the highway went through the park, but we weren't in the park. And there were no cars behind us, and so we were driving slow, though we had never stopped. But we were driving slow. We were probably doing about 35 rather than 50, because, like I said, the boys were having trouble sleeping. They weren't feeling good. And so we loaded them into the car to drive them down the road so they could observe all the holiday lights, because it was around Christmas time, that time of year. And they just, we thought, hey, let's take them to go see the lights. Let's calm them down. And maybe the ride and the lights will help them sleep. like I said, back then they were 2 and 4. And so she pulls us over and she gonna argue us down. And she's like, you can't be in the park this time of night. And why do you have these children out here? And we're like, my husband was driving and he's like, ma'am, this is a public highway that we're on. It's a state highway. We're not in the park. We are driving on the highway. And why we have our kids with us is none of your business. So she writes us out a ticket for being in the park, okay? Well, lo and behold, she finds out that she was wrong and we were right. So she comes the next day and she knocks on our door requesting the ticket back. She never apologized. She just, I found out it was a public highway. Give me that ticket back. Okay, whatever. So I give it back to her. Well, later on that day, she shows up to my house with a DFS worker. And lo and behold, they come up with all kinds of BS reasons and they end up walking away with my children. Now, here's the thing. I had 4 children with me at the time because all of my children at that time were minors, my 2 girls and my 2 boys. Well, my oldest daughter, if I remember right, was 13. The one under her might have been, the boys were 2 and 4, so I want to say my youngest daughter was probably 7 or 8. And then my oldest daughter was, I want to say 13. But like I said, this was years ago because now my oldest daughter is 28 and my youngest daughter is 24. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just so, I'm so old. I'm old. Oh my God. But anyways, like I said, this was years ago, but she shows up with a DFS worker and they determine that, oh my God, my children must be taken out of the home because, and they came up with all these reasons of, child neglect and they never, okay, here's the thing. They took my children and then they never came up with any valid reason as to why. And then they gave us the runaround for hours. It literally took us 6 hours. They took us down to the police station and they had my children in custody and told us that our children were not coming home. And what they did was they ended up taking my 3 youngest. And my oldest, they didn't want. And the reason they didn't want her, I found out later, was because she would not tell them the lies they wanted to hear. Because they wanted her to say how abused she was and how neglected she was and how we weren't feeding her. And I mean, it just wasn't true. And so they came up with this glorified thing. My children were in the foster home, and I have a biracial daughter who is on the more mixed side where she actually has the black texture hair, and so I have to use the pink oil moisturizer and things to that nature to keep her hair groomed. And then the boys are more on the white boy side where, you just brush and go. And it's funny because they said my daughter had lice, but my 2 sons didn't. And so, they made that accusation. And then me and my oldest daughter, who they didn't take from us, and my husband, we ended up going to the WIC office. If anybody knows, the WIC office is also the clinic where you get things done, like they check for lice and booster shots and things like that, child exams. So we went and got checked for lice. None of us had it, and apparently my sons didn't have it. Only my daughter had it, and even the nurse was like, in her 40-something years of being a nurse, she's never heard of a African-American child getting lice because of the chemicals that they use in their hair. And even with her, I was doing the perms and the pink oil moisturizer and things like of that nature. So she was completely amazed that, she was like, yeah, they should have picked one of your white kids. But anyway, then, they came up with another oops, we couldn't get on the docket, so the kids are going to be with us. Well, they ended up having my kids for a total of 6 weeks. And it just, 6 to 8 weeks, I don't remember. I say 6 weeks. My oldest daughter says 8 weeks. So, we'll meet in the middle and say they had them for 7 weeks. I mean, like I said, this was years and years ago, guys. And I've had people tell me how amazingly fast I ended up getting my children back, because I really did. It was a matter of about 2 months, and I had my kids back, because every accusation they were throwing at us, they couldn't prove. And the whole thing in a nutshell was, it came down to Officer Dumbass, who had stopped us on a state highway, was fully embarrassed because she did not know her job. And we told her we weren't doing anything wrong. We were merely giving our kids, our toddler kids, who, like I said, were 2 and 4 at that time, and just giving them a midnight ride, and they were strapped in car seats. I mean, the whole thing, the whole nine. We weren't doing anything wrong. But she was new to the job, and so, she figured she would, sorry, lack of a better term, but she figured she'd fuck with us, And so, when, she found out that she was wrong, and she had to come crawling back to us with her tail between her legs and ask for the ticket back that she had wrongly given us. She shows up with a DFS worker, because I might have been wrong and you embarrassed me, but now I'm going to fuck with you because you embarrassed me. And this is what I say when, is DFS, getting back to the subject, DFS bullshit or for good, because there are children out there who actually need a voice. But how many cases are this child needs a voice because the parent is unattentive drug addict, or the child is being abused or neglected, or whatever, versus oops, somebody got embarrassed and now we're gonna overstep our bounds and we're going to abuse our power, or simply because I don't like the way you look, or simply because I don't like the way you answer that question. Well, needless to say, everybody that I've talked to has told us 2 things about my personal case. Was, how in the hell, if you are abusing and neglecting your children, how did they take 3 and leave 1? Which they totally did. They took my 3 youngest, who were too young to have a voice of their own at the time, and the one oldest who, and I'm not sure, and I'm sure she's going to see this video, and I don't remember how old she was, but I want to say she was like 13, and she had a voice of her own. So they didn't take her because she wouldn't conform to their bullshit. She wouldn't go, oh no, my mama starves me. Oh no, my daddy beats me. Because it wasn't true. We weren't, and it was just amazing to me how I've had people tell me that, they never leave a child behind, because if you're doing it to 1, you're doing it to all, and especially if you're doing it to 3, why would you not be doing it to the 1? And then I've had people tell me, wow, you got your kids back really fast, because normally they have them for a year or more, and we got ours back, mainly we got them back with the first court date. The only reason they had them for the 8 weeks, we'll go with 8 weeks, that they did, is because they couldn't get us on the docket, which they couldn't get us a court date the first time, because oops, they happened to miss it. Yeah, right. But anyway, it was like, it was just total bullshit the entire time. I mean, it was like they really went out of their way to make jackasses out of us. And it was like we would go for visitation with our kids, and the visitation room was full. So we literally had to go stand out front of the building and have our visitation in the little grass yard in the front of the building at the DFS office. I shit you not, people. And this happened in a place called Moberly, Missouri. So yeah, but it was like the police officer just really got her, she really just got her feelings hurt and got totally embarrassed, and she came back to us with her tail between her legs. And I hope she sees this, because now that my children are too old to fuck with, fuck you, bitch. That's how I feel about it. And if you remember me, good on you, because you know what? Even though this happened years ago, you were embarrassed because we knew what we were talking about and you didn't. So, to you. Now I feel better. I feel better doing that. But the truth is, the DFS of the greater St. Louis area has a very different job, and I understand that being in a big city versus a small town where, little pinochle head fucking cops have nothing better to do in small towns than to fuck with people. I understand in big cities that you guys actually have a job to do, because there are, kids out there that need a voice, and I do appreciate you being their voice. But let's face it, how many kids are in the broken foster care system that are more at risk at being in the foster care system than they are at being in their own homes? How much of a higher risk are they for being molested by a non-biological adult? How much more at risk are they for being abused by a non-biological adult? And how much more are they at risk for being overall neglected? The foster care system has been known for losing infants, toddlers, and children to death in the foster care system. So let's just calm our tits on the great foster care system. The foster care system is very broken, people, and it is a very different world from when I was in the foster care system. It is a very scary place, and I would not want to be a child of that system in any state. So I'm just wondering, guys, if and when do we stand up and do away with this part of the government who basically comes in and tries to tell you what morals and values and beliefs to raise your children under? And again, don't get me wrong, okay? There are definitely some children out there who need someone to step in because their parents are alcoholics or drug addicts or just plain retards. But not all of us are. And again, who sets those guidelines, and whose guidelines are we trying to live up to? I mean, morally, whose guidelines are we trying to live up to? And they, you need to feed your children, and you need blah, and you need blah, and you need to blah. Well, the truth is, like I said, my children are 15. The 15-year-old is going to soon be 16, and the other one's 17. And they feed themselves. I mean, they know how to go in the kitchen. Now, don't get me wrong. I pay the rent and put the roof over their head, and I buy the groceries so they have something to feed themselves. But very rarely anymore do I actually go in the kitchen and cook a meal. I mean, I still do, but nowadays, more or less, they're teenage boys. So they go in the kitchen and they cook for themselves. Now I pay the light and gas bill so the stove works, and I pay the electric bill so the refrigerator works, but and I buy the food, but they go in there and cook what they want. And just whose morals and values, as well as standards, are we trying to live up to when DFS comes into our house? I mean, there's a difference between my house is dirty and then my house is nasty. There's a difference between my house is crowded and my house is a hoarder house. There's a difference between I've got a pile of dirty laundry and I've got 8 months worth of dirty laundry, and my kids are digging through the dirty clothes to find clothes. I mean, mine don't, because I do laundry every day, but there's a difference between I have a pile of dirty laundry and I have a mountain of dirty laundry. And even if you got a mountain of dirty laundry, that just means, you don't have time to do laundry because you're raising your kids. I mean, seriously, who came up with these guidelines? And who's enforcing the enforcers? Because once we rip a child away from the only parents they've ever known, what damage are we doing? What damage are we actually doing? And who's going to rectify that damage? I remember going to the DFS office visitations for my oldest son, who, like I said, at the time was 4, and he was terrified. He was 4, and he had never, and the entire time he was born, he had never spent a night away from, his mom and his dad, because he was 4. He had been to his grandmother's house, but he'd never spent the night there. I mean, it was always when he went to bed in his bed at his house. So to go from that one night to being in the arms of a stranger the next, it was horrifying for him. And he would have nightmares and he would cry, and he couldn't understand when we went to visit him why we couldn't take him home. And when we finally did get him home, literally, it took almost a year to get this child secure enough to where he could go and sleep in his own bed. And he would fall asleep in my arms at 4 years old, and I would go to lay him down and he would scream like someone was trying to steal him. And so, it literally took me over a year to get this child back to a secure and safe and stable way of thinking, to where he could depend on mom and dad to keep him safe again, because he lived with the fear even years after. Even though he calmed down, even years after, he was still so terrified that somebody could walk into his house and just take us and there would be nothing we could do about it, to the absolute point of it was just horrific for him. It was horrific. So, I just really wonder who's setting these guidelines and who's enforcing it. Because if the DFS worker comes in my house and I go, "Fuck you, bitch," and she decides, "Well, no, fuck you, I'm just going to take your kids." Are you taking my kids because you think they're in an unsafe environment? Or are you taking my kids to prove a point of your power? Are you taking your kids to taking my kids to spite me? And who's going to pay for that in the end? So again, don't get me wrong. I truly, truly understand that there are kids out there, because I grew up in New Orleans and the ghetto. So, I remember walking past houses where kids were sitting out on the doorstep And as I was an adult, I remember being over there where I would go down to the corner store at 2 in the morning to get a pack of cigarettes, and I would see kids sitting out on the doorstep because the mom was in there with, you know, their dope dealer doing their thing to get their drugs or doing their drugs or whatever. And so I believe there are kids out there who need help. But I also believe that there are DFS workers out there with an agenda and with their own set of morals and values and with their own abusive power bullshit. And I also believe that there are DFS workers out there who are just absolutely playing God. And the foster care system is so very broken because you do run a higher risk of a child being abused, molested, neglected when they are in a home with a non-biological adult, whether it's male or female, and you run a higher risk of that child being at risk for injury and abuse by non-biological siblings in that home. So, you know, comment below what your thoughts are on this topic, because you know, my thought is they need to do away with it, and we need to, as citizens, look out for the children our damn selves. And here's the thing: if you've got a neighbor that you think is doing something wrong, then investigate it your damn self. You know, because you do have the right to ask questions if you think something's going on. And you do have the right to pay attention. Now, I'm not saying go get all in these people's business. I'm not saying go get all in your neighbor's business. But I'm saying pay attention. And if you see the kid, hey, how are you doing? You know, what's going on? You know, hey, would you like a bag of chips? Are you hungry? You know, and if the kid goes, no, I'm not really hungry, great. And if the kid wants the bag of chips, that doesn't necessarily mean they haven't eaten today. You know, use your own discretion. Generally, we as parents and adults, we can get that feel, we can get that red flag, we can, you know, we don't need a government agency to come in and tell us that seeing a child sitting on the doorstep of a house at 2 in the morning is wrong. And see, here's what kills me is they're never around when that's going on, but you as a neighbor are. So, you know, anyways, I'm going to wrap this one up because it is getting kind of lengthy. And, the weather is kind of weird out there, and my cat is looking at me like I've lost my mind because he wants to go out and I won't let him. But anyways, guys, again, I'm going to wrap this one up the same way I started it. I can be found all over the web, so look me up and comment below on the topic. Let me know what you think, because everyone's got an experience of some sort with these people. So let me know how yours was, if it was good or bad, if it was right or wrong. Comment below, and hey, why not subscribe while you're here? Why not give it a thumbs up? Hit that bell. And every time I make a new video, you'll be notified. Have a great day, guys, and get ready for the weekend.